Welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, boots on the ground, live in Chicago on you were witness to history yesterday,
That's
Bill, that we're
crazy.
going to get into, but like the NBA was bananas yesterday. We started out the show yesterday talking about Giannis asking out, which feels like, I don't know, 6 weeks ago.
By the way, congratulations. Let's not bring this up. The Sixers pick doesn't go to the Thunder. Sam Presti was in the draft room. He was in there,
Wow.
clearly anticipating that he was going to get that pick, and he was still, the odds were defied. Congratulations, Sixers fans. John, I know deep down in your fan heart that still beats somewhere in your body, you are excited, you are thrilled, you're feeling optimistic. Way to go, pal.
Thank you. I'm trying to slow roll this thing because normally this is the type of event that would get me back in on the Sixers, but recent history hasn't gone well on that. I will say congrats to our producer, Sean, who's also a Sixers fan in Philadelphia and very excited about it. But Sixers fans, Bill, lack all perspective. As I mentioned, yesterday was bonkers in the NBA. We have so much to get to. The Knicks have the Celtics on the ropes, and Boston might have lost Jayson Tatum. We're awaiting word on his injury. The Warriors are one game away from elimination. There are two big game fives tonight. As I mentioned, we started out with Giannis yesterday asking out. The Mavs that we're going to get to shortly end up with the number one. All this stuff happens, and my phone is exploding with Philadelphians who are just so thrilled that they got the third pick. And I'm like, that's like the seventh biggest thing that happened yesterday in the NBA.
It's. Let me also add to that list. The Spurs jumped to 2, which makes them all. They were already capable of getting Giannis. Now they have 2 and 14. You're right. There's a lot going on. But to Philly fans, on behalf of John, his inner child, his inner fan, it's exciting, I'm sure, in Philadelphia. Because I thought, we'll talk about it, I thought you were getting jumped. Everybody in that room thought you were getting jumped. Even obviously the announcer thought you'd gotten jumped, got it wrong, whoever was doing the broadcast. So congratulations to dodging the odds.
Well, let's get into that. We'll get into the basketball components and some unfortunate stuff that happened in that next Celtics game to Jayson Tatum and the Wolves and all that stuff from yesterday a little bit later. But we're going to start with the lottery where Bill was in the room. And I'm so glad you were in the room because there was some debate about whether or not you'd be in the room again. You were there for an all-timer. The Mavs with a 1.8% chance of the number one pick. They leap up 10 spots. The biggest jump up in lotto history, Bill. As you mentioned, the Spurs, they had just a 26% chance to land in the top 4. They go up 6 spots. Bill, the odds of the Mavs and the Spurs combo landing at 1-2 was 1 in 1,000. If you add in the Sixers landing at 3, the odds of the Mavs going 1, the Spurs going 2, and the Sixers going 3, that odds was 1 in 10,000, Bill. You were there. Take us through, set the scene. What was happening back there?
Let me paint the picture. So a select number of media members, a representative from each team that's in the draft lottery, and some other dignitaries go into a sequestered room. And let me tell you, John, they take the security very seriously. I must look shady or up to something because I went through, you leave your phone, you leave all the electronics. I went through the metal detector, and the security guard, who's a very serious looking gentleman, he just honed in on me. And he goes, he literally goes, do you have something in your left pocket? No, sir. I got a body search, John. Apparently, I looked like I was up to no good. So I finally, long after my other colleagues make it in there, you get in the room, and the way this works, and I know you know this, but for people that don't, I think it's really fascinating. There's a lottery machine, obviously, and they have 14 numbers in that machine. And what they do is they pick 4 different numbers that creates 1,001 possible scenarios. And there's a gentleman at the front of the room who is obviously taking the lid off, and the ping pong ball comes up. There's a guy in the back of the room. He actually was standing next to me, so it was very awkward, who turns his back to the machine, looks at a watch, and after 20 seconds raises his hand to time when the balls come out. And if you are, the Jazz, and you have a 14.5% chance of the first pick, you're assigned 14.5% of those combinations, so on and so forth. And there's one number, the 1,001st, where it gets redone. And if you have the best odds, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, and so on. So we have this thick booklet, John, where as they're doing it, you're looking at the numbers and you're trying to figure out what they are. Let me grab my notebook here. So the first number was 10, right? It's like, okay, 10, it could still be 1, 2, 3, 10, it could be Utah, it could be. Then the next number was 14. And all of a sudden, we're all scrambling. And you have 10 or 20 seconds, but there's pages you have to go through. We're like, okay, well, some of these teams then it goes to 11 is the next number. So it just blows out of the water the way the numbers are assigned all the top. And we're trying to figure out what's going on. I'm looking at Philly. Yeah. Number 7 lands in, right? So it's 7, 10, 11, 14. And it's hard to figure out where to look. Everyone in front of me is scrambling with a piece of paper. On the dais where the GMs are scrambling. and I realize it's Dallas. I just flip to the back and I realize it's the Mavs. And as I intake a breath, there are actual gasps from the dais of the representatives. There were two people, I won't say who, but one was media and one was a team person who swore out loud. And it's supposed to be kind of quiet, like swear words are dropping. And then you have what I call the prom queen or sort of effect, where they announce it about 2 seconds after we all sort of exclaim, hold our breaths. Some people yelled. And the representative, the assistant GM for the Mavs, he sort of lights up. And I watched, because I had my angle, every other person on the dais for a quick moment looked at this person with disgust and hatred and jealousy. And then they fixed their face and got up and gave him a big hug. It was a crazy scene.
Well, I mean, the odds on this were so long, 1.8% chance that the Mavs jump up into the one spot, that Nico Harrison wasn't even on hand, dispatched a lieutenant to handle this thing. And this has introduced a ton of chaos into what's going to happen around the draft period and this offseason, Bill, because not if you have the Wizards or say the Jazz end up with the 1 or the 2 spot, they're going to take Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper and continue with their rebuild, and that's fine. Now with the Mavs, there's at least a non-zero chance that I expect that the most likely scenario is that they take Cooper Flagg, but this is an organization that just traded Luka Doncic. All things are on the table now. All kinds of people are discussing all kinds of different permutations. Could they potentially trade the pick? Could they potentially try to get in on the Giannis sweepstakes? Might they move on from AD and try to start a new rebuild around Cooper Flagg? Then the Spurs, same deal. They're going to be in on the Giannis sweepstakes anyway, as you and I discussed. But now at 2, do they take Dylan Harper and move on from Stephon Castle? Could they potentially get Giannis without even trading the number 2 pick, Bill? Something that John Hollinger from The Athletic floated from somebody he had talked to. Could something like Castle, Devin Vassell, they have the number 14 pick in this draft as well from the Hawks, the 2027 Hawks unprotected, and maybe pick swaps get Giannis done. Bill, chaos. Then you have the Sixers at 3, and who knows what they're going to do. I seriously doubt they're going to go 2 timelines here. You know Daryl Morey's over there already dangling the pick. I know he said, oh, we love the 3rd pick and, we're going to take best available, but that's some serious GM posturing. What are you hearing from after you got out of the sequestered room? Everybody had to be a buzz about this.
By the way, so when you're in this sequestered room, you are trapped with everybody for an hour and a half. As we know, an hour and a half before everyone else, and then we watch the broadcast. And once they say who has the first pick, they let us out. So you have time to talk to folks. And I was talking to an NBA person, and they were talking about how their fellow colleagues tend to lie. Not saying this is Daryl Morey, but made me think of this in your Daryl Morey claims they're going to use the 3 pick. And they said to me, in your job, how do you tell when a GM or an agent is lying to you? And I said, their mouth is moving. And this person who works in NBA front office really enjoyed that. Really liked it. So the speculation here in Chicago, right? As you know, almost every GM, executive scouts, the hotel that I'm sitting in is teeming with basketball people. And everyone is speculating what you're speculating. This idea that maybe if Giannis is willing to go to Dallas, right? If he sees that as a destination that to him would be a place where he thinks he could win, there's a lot of people in high positions of power across the NBA who think Nico Harrison, given this lifeline, might feel inclined to try and erase the booze when he goes to Mavs games by, instead of drafting Cooper Flagg and seeing what happens and having a longer bit of runway, just go for it now, bring back excitement. I think if they can land Giannis, and it's a big if, right? Because you're right. The Spurs are going to be in on him. Other teams are going to be in on him. The betting odds still say that it's Houston, despite what happened last night. There's a lot of moving parts. But you are correct. I think your speculation is spot on. The speculation of Nico Harrison's colleagues here in Chicago is that Giannis to the Mavs and in effect Cooper Flagg to Milwaukee is far from impossible.
Those three Texas teams, rather, Dallas, the Spurs, and the Rockets, I feel like are super front runners there. But Bill, can you imagine the courage, we'll call it? I have to use a euphemism here. It's not even a euphemism, but like the temerity that it would take for Nico Harrison to get out of jail free card where he has a 1.8% chance of getting the number 1 pick and then to deal it after. I think that if you have a chance to get Giannis, you have to at least explore the possibility, but you'd have to get like the defibrillator paddles and people, EMTs at the ready for everybody in Dallas. Like, how would fans in Dallas react to that? Yeah, you got Giannis, but potentially you give away another generational talent who could be around longer, who's younger, who's on a cheaper deal. I don't know if that's a good idea or a terrible idea.
I wouldn't trade Cooper Flag for Giannis, but it is Giannis, and it would be, look. I think the right like if you're asking me, if I'm the GMs or I'm like running multiple organizations, the best outcome for everybody, including the players, by the way, is Giannis to the Spurs, is Cooper Flag to Dallas, and ironically and bizarrely, in the sort of the upside down reality of the NBA, now Dallas has a very similar timeline, kind of, to the Lakers, where you have a young generational. We think this will be Cooper Flag superstar, but you've also got an older veteran who's still pretty impactful, but you don't know how many years you have left, so you're on two timelines, kind of win now, but also you have a long term. And then I think it's the Rockets doing something else. And you've talked about the fact that that's not a perfect fit, Giannis to Houston, although you do it if you can. You might look back in 2 or 3 years and the Rockets being forced to chase the right piece and not the most desirable piece in the moment really benefits them. So I'm with you. You said it, Nico traded Luka. Who knows what he's going to do with this golden opportunity from the basketball gods?
You have taken the NBA's principal chaos agent and given him the opportunity to introduce more chaos into a league that's already bananas. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we have to discuss more of what happened in the lottery. You're there. You were in the room. We haven't even gotten to the poor Wizards, the poor Jazz, all the people who are clamoring for lottery reform. And then, Bill, there are 2 other teams that could have been in the Mavs scenario if only some other things had broken their way late in the season. They're just like absolutely devastating if you are the Bulls and the Heat. We'll discuss all of that on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. We are also a podcast. Find us wherever you find your favorite shows. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. Bill, we talked about the Mavs jumping up to 1. We talked about the Spurs jumping up to 2. Those were the happy outcomes from yesterday. There were some less exciting outcomes for teams that were hopeful to get a top pick. The Jazz had a 52% chance of landing in the top 4, 14% chance at number 1. They fall down 4 spots to number 5. Same thing with the Wizards. They tumbled to number 6. Here's something that's even more brutal, because I do want to discuss whether or not there should be lottery reform. More brutal than that, the Bulls end up at 12. Bill, they lost a coin flip at the end of the season with the Dallas Mavericks. By virtue of a 50-50 coin flip, they could have ended up with the number 1 pick. Instead, they're number 12. And here's another one that Hollinger pointed out on Blue Sky yesterday. The Heat, the Miami Heat, would have had the Dallas lottery numbers if they hadn't come back from a 6-point deficit with 5 minutes left to beat the Hawks in overtime of the East play-in game, which got them exactly nothing except for a first-round exit. Bill, the Heat, can you imagine if the Heat, after the Jimmy Butler scenario, and like got Pat Riley doing his exit interviews and saying he doesn't regret anything, and like if they had just been gifted the number 1 pick in Cooper Flag, and instead, nothing?
I need a mathematician or a physicist to answer this, but I watched Ashton Kutcher and Chaos Theory, so I think I have like a grasp of it. I think, doesn't the universe change enough? And, whatever, a grasshopper hops here and a hurricane there.
Right,
it probably
butterfly waves its wings.
There it is. You're right. Here's the thing, though. My reaction to all of this is actually this is great. And if it's lottery reform, I want more punishment for teams that tank. Because one of my primary takeaways when I was in the room around the poor representatives who were there was don't tank. Since they changed the lottery format to the format that I described at the start of the show, no team with the worst record has gotten the number 1 pick. And so now, did the universe reward the Dallas Mavericks for something that they deserve? No, this is totally undeserved and totally unfair, much like life. But I do and you named some teams that got things they didn't deserve, but I have zero sympathy for some of the teams that you mentioned. Like the teams that were the most egregious tankers fell. Teams that were pulling guys out in the fourth quarter and trying to lose and getting frustrated when their teams would win games on accident fell. And I'm here for it. I don't think the Mavs deserve this, but I'm really happy for the Spurs. I'm really happy for your Sixers. Like I don't mind that the Raptors and the Jazz and some of these other teams that leaned into bad basketball had a very, very bad day in Chicago yesterday.
From an entertainment perspective, for those of us who are neutrals in terms of like where all this fell, the chaos that has been introduced at the top of the draft and all the trades that could come out of it this offseason will be tremendous to watch for all of us. However, if you are a long-suffering Wizards fan, I could understand why you'd be upset about this, or a Jazz fan. Similarly, this is the third straight season that the worst record has fell to fifth. It's the second worst, falling to sixth. The Pels fell to seventh after a disastrous season of injuries. That's like a real bummer if you're the Pels. And that wasn't the Pels tanking. That was the Pels just being crushed by the injury basketball gods, which I thought was a bummer. Also, to your point about the Mavs not deserving it, I read a quote from the Mavs representative that said that they did deserve it because they didn't tank. They tried to play, and then they got into the play-in, and it didn't work out for them. But late season, even after their injuries, Anthony Davis came back, and this was the basketball gods rewarding them for at least trying. Are you buying any of that?
No, but whatever. Tell yourself whatever you have to feel like you earn some. Some people are just born with the lottery ticket, right? And they're good for them. That reminds me, the rules are sort of nebulous in what I'm allowed to talk about from the room. Everything's supposed to be off the record unless you sort of get permission. So I won't say who this person is, but one of the teams who should have drafted highly and did not. When it all got done, everybody was hugging the assistant GM for the Mavs. In the room, right? It's a front dais. There's where all the action happens. There's sort of TV equipment behind it, and there's a wall. And behind the wall is food. And I saw one of the people who should have drafted higher walk over there to have a moment to themselves. So I decided to follow and say hi because, the reporter instinct. And they were just in the corner staring at this crappy food, trying to figure out whether they wanted the salad or a free Gatorade. And I go, how's it going? And they looked up and they go, not great, man. I mean, there was some heartbreak because you're right.
Well,
It's brutal. Yeah.
There was. I mean, we didn't talk about, like, if you're the Kings, right? The Kings are another example. Their pick conveyed. It goes to the Hawks. So the Kings had a terrible season.
Right.
They end up firing their head coach. They replace their front office, and then they get into the play-in and they don't go anywhere. And they couldn't even get a lotto pick out of this season. Poor Sacramento, forever put upon. Some other things that I just wanted to run past you here from the lottery, Bill. Are you buying any of these conspiracy theories? Because now immediately, because of the Mavs jumping up into the one pick, and people are floating conspiracy theories. Right. And I love these. Okay. I love the frozen envelope theory going back to Patrick Ewing. Yes. I love Greg Popovich is somebody who had said that the Spurs as an organization deserve no more lottery luck ever. Well, guess what? They have the last two rookies of the year. Now they've got the second overall pick. I love this stuff.
Here's the thing. I believe in the frozen envelope. I believe it. And I have said this before on here, and I've said it a few times when I filled in on Jim Rome, where the NBA league office would have an executive reach out and chastise me for saying it. They are still, 30? Yeah. They are so sensitive about it. So I'm here for the conspiracy theories. I mean, I do think that, but I was in the room and I was trying to think how you could have done this, right? Because as I described, you have these 14 balls and you have this sort of process. They take the same 14 balls after they sort of select the four, they put them back in and they do it again. So, if you're trying to convince yourself that, I don't even know the physics of this, the four numbers that got the Mavs the pick, those particular ping pong balls were lighter, then it should have come up again and again and again, right? I think it's on the up. And I have had so many friends reach out to me who are just NBA fans who are convinced this was fixed. And I've had to text this and I just get back, gifts about what an idiot I am. I don't know how you do it. I was in there. I think it's just dumb luck, emphasis in the Mavs case on dumb.
Yeah, I think that's what it is too, but I do like the idea that everybody was up in arms about it because you could see whatever you want to see in this. That before trading Luka, that they knew that they were going to trade Luka, and somehow that this is some sort of get right for new Mavs ownership, Patrick Dumont and Nico Harrison, and the other one was that Anthony Davis has been linked to a couple of these because Anthony Davis gets traded to Dallas. All of a sudden, Dallas ends up with the number one pick. Don't forget that back when Anthony Davis was traded away to LA from New Orleans in 2019, the Pelicans ended up with the number one pick. And then, of course, like the Spurs have this incredible luck. That's where the conspiracy theories fall a little bit for me, because if the league was going to rig this thing, are you going to rig it for the fifth smallest market in the league? I mean, probably not, but they have been really fortunate.
And let me also add that the NBA craves balance. And I think, by the way, we haven't had this talk. I think they were right. I think these playoffs are a product of that. There is no, all the balance, the East isn't balanced. The East is not very good. The West is really good. And if Giannis goes to a Western Conference team, that just increases. So if you're going to fix the lottery, in a pretty good draft, you might want the top 2 picks to actually go to the East to just offer some pathways for some of those teams. And you can do this. You could do this for Chicago if you're fixing the lottery. And I'm sitting here. It's a major market. It hasn't had relevant basketball really since Derrick Rose, and that was short lived. So I'm here for the conspiracy theories too. But if it's a conspiracy, they're not very good at it. They didn't do it properly.
They didn't think it through for sure. The Bulls would have been an ideal spot. And again, they lost a coin flip to the Mavs. If you're a Bulls fan and you end up with the 12th pick after, a season where they were like mildly entertaining towards the end of the year and then flamed out, like what a kick to the gut that is. But let's talk about some of these teams that didn't end up at the top of the draft, bill, and how that could also set them up to get in on the Giannis sweepstakes. We discussed it a little bit yesterday. The Nets end up with the 8th pick. If they had ended up with like 1 or 2 or 3, I think that there's a higher probability that maybe they consider holding on to that. Now, all of a sudden, 8 is super in play. The Rockets were always going to be in play. They're at 10 now, Bill. I suspect that they'll be dangling that pick along with players that we discussed. Like, do you decide to move on from Jalen Green? I'm a huge Tari Eason fan. I think he's like a better shooter than Amen Thompson and does a lot of the things that Amen Thompson does defensively, just not as well. He could be somebody that you'd throw in the mix, maybe a Jabari Smith. And then, of course, the Spurs that we mentioned. The Spurs have the 2, but they also have the 14, Bill. Anything that you heard from those teams potentially being active as we go towards the draft in the offseason?
Every single player or every single team is going to be active on Giannis that even has a remote possibility. But I think the question that people keep raising, and I think it's just we need to say this, is let's presume Giannis wants to leave, which, by the way, is the proper presumption. We don't know how forceful he's going to be on where he's willing to go. You and I are assuming he wants to be a Spur, or he'd be open to be a Maverick, or maybe a Rocket. But I've never talked to Giannis Antetokounmpo about Texas and whether he wants to live there. And I know that I had reported back in October that there were some suggestions that maybe New York or LA, and there's been much more concrete reporting since then that those are places that he would look at and be interested in. I also heard, just sort of talking to people, and this isn't rocket science, you had already sort of brought this up, but there are certainly people who believe, especially if you're trying to make some of the salaries work, especially if it's San Antonio, that a third team would be involved. And people believe that John Horst, the GM in Milwaukee, really, really wants to involve Portland to try and get his draft picks back. I think they're at the end of this decade or when they control those picks. So there was sort of a feeling, if you get really into the weeds, that maybe one of the big winners was the Trailblazers, because they have a sense that maybe they can be part of a 3-way trade and get some value, because teams have to make contracts work and what they have to offer is Milwaukee's picks back to them.
Yeah, there's so many variables here. We discussed this yesterday about how the Blazers, the Pelicans, and the Wizards could be sneaky involved as 3-team trade partners because they control so much of the Bucks draft moving forward. Bucks don't control their draft till 2031. So yes, man, we are headed for, even by NBA standards, and we say this every offseason, that it's silly season. But man, once we get into this offseason and the playoffs are wrapped up, it's going to be really something to behold. Let's take a quick break. And then the playoffs, as we mentioned, we haven't even gotten there yet. 2 crazy games last night. And unfortunately, the Knicks, normally under normal circumstances, we'd be talking about the Knicks 1 game away from going to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years. We are going to discuss that, but we must discuss on the other side as well. Unfortunately, what happened to Jayson Tatum as we wait to hear injury news from him. We'll discuss all of that coming up. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Game 4 between the Celtics and the Knicks at MSG yesterday. It was an incredible game. The Knicks won by 8. They were down 14. Another comeback. Now they go up 3-1. They've got the defending champs on the ropes. But unfortunately, the big story from yesterday, Bill, and I'm sure that you saw it and everybody was talking about it in Chicago at the Combine, was the Jayson Tatum non-contact injury in the 4th quarter. He had to be helped off the court. He was in a wheelchair. They had a video of him in a wheelchair, in the bowels of the stadium with his hands covering his face. And Bill, this came at like the worst possible time. Obviously, you never want to see anything like this. Tatum was playing so well, and you and I had been previously talking about, okay, they need a Jayson Tatum game. They need him to find his level, and he absolutely did yesterday. It was one of the best playoff games I've seen him play, and then this happened. So afterwards, not surprisingly, Joe Mazzulla and Al Horford talked about what happened with Jayson Tatum, and they were pretty despondent.
Yeah, obviously you're always worried about someone's health. So the fact that he had to be carried off, like you said, he's the type of guy that when he gets right up. So he didn't, and we'll know tomorrow exactly what it is. But yeah, I mean it's tough to watch. A guy like him get carried off like that.
It's very concerning. Just from the care that I have for him, and what he means to us, what he means to Boston. Just very tough for us, and more importantly, it's just really tough for him right now. So, let's see what happens. But just very tough for our group altogether.
You guys just feel very down. How would you characterize just the mood right now overall, with both the loss and then whatever Jason's going through?
The loss is the loss. More importantly, it's Jayson that I'm worried about, and just making sure that I'm there for him, and that's my priority.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
I mean, Bill, these are the defending champs who are down 3-1, and you heard Al Horford, the loss is the loss. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you see from a guy who, we've discussed this, he's so durable. He always plays, and for him to go down non-contact like that, it had to be something bad.
I mean, you already said it. He couldn't put weight on it. He was in a wheelchair. We're waiting on what it's going to be, but I don't think anyone in their right mind is expecting anything other than bad news or even worse news. I mean, it's, we're waiting, I think the inevitability of a lot of time missed. And it feels, because the reality is, John, that the Knicks have been better and they found a way to win these games, and they probably would win this series even if there was a miracle for Tatum, but there's not. I mean, he's not going to play, probably, almost certainly. And that means this series is over. It feels kind of gross to talk about, but that's the reality, that the Celtics season just ended with that injury, I think. Like, any hope of a comeback, and they're talented enough to do it. I know they're 8-2 without Jayson Tatum this year, and I know that, but this is a legitimate team in the New York Knicks, and so you have to worry about what this means for Tatum and his timeline of recovery. It's also true that the team that was the betting favorite to get through the series entering that game, even though they were down 2-1, is almost certainly finished, despite the fact the series isn't technically wrapped up yet.
Yeah, and I want to get to the Knicks and give them their credit, because they have been fantastic and they're so resilient, and they had another comeback, a third comeback in the series, 3 comebacks in their 3 wins. But for Jayson Tatum, in that moment where he was pretty much single-handed, I don't know how much of the game you caught because you were, in Chicago and busy with lottery stuff, but in that moment, he was almost single-handedly keeping the Celtics in that game, where he was trading blows with the entire Knicks team. I mean, in the third quarter, Jalen Brunson was outrageously good. And then in the fourth quarter, Mikal Bridges was outrageously good. And then throughout the game, Karl Anthony Towns had one of his most efficient games. And then on the other side, it was basically Derek White hitting threes. And then Jayson Tatum with a super heroic effort. I mean, he's in those Superman commercials right now. Those are ill times. But he had, at the time when he went down, Bill, 42 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals, 2 blocks. He was over 50% shooting from the floor, 7 threes out of 16 attempts. I mean, like, that was the game that you and I yesterday were saying Jayson Tatum had when we played that sound, and Jayson Tatum said, I have to be better. I know I have to be better, and I hear the criticism, and I'm okay with it. And then he performed and he produced.
And it's the kind of game that leads to whatever was going on with Jayson Tatum, right, from a shooting perspective, and going back to last postseason. When you're a superstar, when you're at his level, when you're as self-aware as he revealed himself to be in that comment you're referring to, those kind of games aren't just singular. They tend to correct your direction as a player. That was going to be we were going to get that version of Jayson Tatum, I think, more often than not in the playoffs. And if that's true, and this isn't a shot at Knicks fans, right? The Knicks are awesome. If that's true, if Tatum stays healthy, if Tatum's playing at that level, and Boston finds a way to win that game, I mean, the Celtics are the favorites to win the whole thing, right? That's part of the thing, too, is they finally tapped into that version of Jayson Tatum, and it's been such a awful year for injuries for some guys, and we've seen some of it in these playoffs, that to add him to the list, life isn't fair. It just feels so brutally unfair given the context of how he was playing and what the Celtics were trying to achieve.
That loss, coupled with the loss of Jayson Tatum, is potentially seismic in how it could shift things in the Eastern Conference, not just for this season and these playoffs,
right.
but moving forward. And for the Knicks, I mean, let's discuss the Knicks, because that was a great night for them. It's unfortunate for Jayson Tatum, but Bill, it's been 25 years since they've made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Mike Breen said it was the biggest win in 25 years. The last one was in 2000 when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. At the time, Bill, the U.S. hadn't invaded Iraq. The USB flash drive patent hadn't been filed. It was 7 years before the first iPhone. I mean, this is like, there are fully formed humans walking around who had adult
I have a couple
humans
of those fully formed humans. Yeah.
Right, who hadn't been born yet. We are now one game away, both for the Knicks and the Pacers, for having a Pacers-Knicks. I know you're excited about this because you love New York City, and this could potentially get you there for some of the playoffs.
Well, if the bosses are watching, so there was a push to have me cover the Western Conference only, and I put in a request. So if you're watching, guys, I still want to cover the Knicks if and when they make it. And they're now the betting favorites, John, to make the finals. I don't want to jump the gun here because they're obviously on the verge of the conference finals. And of all people, I'm going to give the Pacers an enormous amount of respect and a real chance. The Knicks are the betting favorites to make the 2025 NBA Finals. If that doesn't tell you the universe and the NBA are upside down, and this is one of the most chaotically fun seasons that I can remember in living memory, nothing will. I mean, they are, and they have the best player in basketball in the playoffs right now. Right now, in terms of performances in this postseason, maybe mixed with what you've seen in the past, Jalen Brunson's the best player in the NBA in the playoffs right now. And so, whatever, they got to get there. There's the ways to go. But talking about the Knicks as potential NBA champions doesn't feel as silly and stupid as it might have even a week or two ago.
Brunson was spectacular in the third quarter. He had 18 of his 39 points in the third quarter, and it really helped them get back into the game. And as I mentioned, Mikal Bridges was great at both ends of the floor, and Cat was super efficient. He made 11 of his 15 shots. OG Anunoby, who's been like flitting in and out. Like, there have been moments when you go, oh man, there's OG. And then there are moments when you're looking around and wondering like where he's been. He had 20 points last night. He had a massive steal in the fourth quarter, played fantastic defense. These Knicks, Bill, are so resilient. I think about like going back to the first round against the Pistons when you and I thought that there were big chunks of that series where the Pistons were the better team and the Knicks got lucky to get out of the first round. And then in this second round where they had to have, of their 3 wins, all 3 were double-digit comebacks. And now they're looking at going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, what a season for the Knicks.
Can I also say, because hindsight obviously gives you a lot of perspective, it turns out that opening round series was not a reflection of the Knicks being weak. It's how good the Pistons have become and how good maybe they're going to be going forward, because it was hard at the time to assess how close that series was in terms of, is this because the Knicks are really underwhelming, or is it because Detroit's really, really good? It's the latter. I mean, again, the Knicks are on the verge of a conference finals, so credit to you, to Detroit, for pushing those guys in a series they could have won. We've had so much great basketball, and it turns out a lot of that great basketball, see the Pacers, see the Timberwolves winning against the Lakers, wasn't just shocking in the first round. It's significant for who's going to ultimately be an NBA champion this year.
No doubt when we get the Jayson Tatum news, we'll have further conversations about this, but that shift in the Eastern Conference landscape, I mean, you just mentioned the Pistons. Like, where do the Pistons fall next year? Where do the Knicks fall next year? I can't believe I'm doing this. Where do the Sixers, who have the 3rd pick in the draft, fall next year? It's just,
Look at you.
And then the Pacers are one game away from a second straight Eastern Conference Finals. The NBA is amazing. It's my favorite sport. It's a good thing that we're on the show. Let's take a quick break, and then on the other side, we will discuss the other game from last night that also had big ripple effects. The Wolves beat the Warriors. They're one game away from going to the Western Conference Finals again, and the Warriors are one game from vacation. We'll do that coming up. Don't go anywhere. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Game 4 of the Wolves and the Warriors last night. The Wolves won by 7. They are now commanding lead in the series. They're up 3-1. The Warriors needed that game, Bill. And in a game that they absolutely had to have in order to buy them some time to get Steph Curry back, you and I both said, what has to happen? They have to have playoff Jimmy. Well, guess what? They did not get playoff Jimmy. 34 minutes from Jimmy Butler last night, just 14 points on 9 shots, Bill. 4 other Warriors took more shots than Jimmy Butler in a must-have game. Now, I got you something. Don't say that I don't think about you, because I was thinking about you last night. Steve Kerr, who you know I'm a big fan of, was asked about Jimmy Butler, and his response was curious, and you were the number one person I thought of, and I want to get your reaction to this. Here's what Steve Kerr said.
I don't have to say a whole lot to Jimmy. You know, we collaborate all the time, and we talk about ideas. And I always feel like he has a great sense for the game, and he does whatever's necessary to win. He's proven that, not only here since we traded for him, but over the years. He knows what's needed, and I'm confident that Game 5, he's the ultimate competitor. He'll be ready to roll.
Bill, Jimmy, who knows what's needed, took 9 shots.
Jimmy doesn't know what's needed. And Steve needs to tell Jimmy what's needed. And what's needed is about 3 times as many shots. Or maybe 2.5 times as many shots if you want them to be a little better looks and whatever. Move the ball. I think Steve Kerr is a complicated coach to assess. And I think we could do an entire hour on Steve Kerr. But this does not cover him in glory, John Gonzalez. I mean, what are we talking about here? You don't have Steph Curry. You do have the guy that you just said, that Steve Kerr just said, has won before and has won here. He needs to go out there and win you games. It's desperation mode. And I keep saying this, but I want to say it again. You didn't need Jimmy Butler to win you 3 games or 2 games. After you went up 1-0, but you lost Steph sort of early in that game. You need him to win you a single basketball game. And he hasn't done that. And that's on Butler, and that's on Steve Kerr if Steve's not out there saying, dude, I need you to take over, take shots, and be the offense.
Yeah, their best chance to get offense without Steph Curry around was Jimmy Butler. And then beyond that, it's become Jonathan Kuminga, which tells you what kind of dire straits the offense has been in, although Jonathan Kuminga has played much better. Does it do anything for you that Draymond kind of tried to cover for Jimmy Butler and said he's not been feeling well? He's been pretty not well all day.
I mean, okay, sure. I don't want to hear it. I just look, maybe that's true. Maybe that's legitimate. A, nobody cares about excuses in the playoffs. And B, this is sort of unfair, but Michael Jordan just made it so it's hard to care about people being sick. I mean, that flu game, whether it was flu or pizza or I think whatever it was, right? It's in lore. It's a part of the lore of the NBA. So no. And again, I like Butler and I'm rooting for the Warriors. I was talking to some Warriors guys at the event yesterday, right? We just sort of shooting the breeze and there was a melancholy sort of vibe going on. And even this was before the game, but even then I said to these guys, if you win this game, you've got an opportunity and a chance. And it's not as if Jimmy Butler has been sick for for game 2, game 3, and game 4. If so, mix in some vitamin C. I mean, he has team doctors. So no, I'm not here for the excuses, and it's a bummer for basketball, and it's obviously unfortunate for the Warriors that they couldn't find a way to win a single game, and that Jimmy Butler didn't. It's a lot to ask, but it's the playoffs. If you're playoff Jimmy, go win a playoff game.
It's a lot to ask. It is the playoffs. You need to win one game. Instead, Bill, they have lost. The Warriors have 3 straight playoff games for the first time since 2016. It's just the second time in the Steve Kerr era that the Warriors have lost that many playoff games in a row. And now their backs are really up against it. And the chances that they're even alive to get Steph Curry back seem pretty diminished. Last night, Anthony Edwards was fantastic. He had 30 points. 2 steals, 6 threes. He had a shot that was essentially from half court, Bill, at the half that basically got them going, that got the Wolves going. And then they just came out and absolutely crushed Golden State in the third quarter. Julius Randle was talking about how good Anthony Edwards was in this game. I want to play this for you because sometimes we get wrapped up in what the Warriors didn't do rather than just appreciating the greatness that is Ant. Well, Julius Randle spent some time appreciating after the game last night.
The brightest star in the room. And not just from what he does on the basketball court, it's his personality and how he brings everybody together. How he can communicate and just light up a room. You know what I mean? He has that it factor. So for me, I always just try to tell him to go be great. I said it before. I try to tell him to go be great. And I try to play off of that and make the game as easy as possible as I can for him. But, I mean, it's really him. I said it from the beginning when I got traded here. He's special. He has a chance to be as great as he wants to be, you know what I mean? So I just try to push him and challenge him and also be there for him any way I can because, we only going to go as far as he goes, as he takes us. He's taking us pretty far right now.
That was our favorite player, Bill, you and I, Julius Randle, who's been fantastic in this series, appreciating Anthony Edwards, who's really stepped forward. They look great.
By the way, speaking of Julius Randle, if I made a list of things I did not anticipate this NBA season and had to rank them, I'd go 100 deep and not know where anything. But my love and affection and respect for Julius Randle that I did not see coming.
Me too.
Would be high on the list. By the way, what a leader. I also just love it when guys bring their kids out. Like, that's cool. Like, I like the whole energy. And that's what an Anthony Edwards needs to hear. So Ant had been better than Tatum from a shooting perspective earlier in this series. But it took him a while to get it going. And last night, especially when Ant started seeing that flurry of threes, it kind of felt like what Tatum's game felt like before Tatum got hurt. And that performance and that shooting efficiency and that sort of the greatness of Anthony Edwards and his all-around game that we finally saw that Randall's talking about, that's not an anomaly. That's what should have been happening. And I think that's probably what is going to follow more often than not in these playoffs. And that being the case, John, an already good team is, again, leveled up. Timberwolves, any team left can win the whole thing. But Minnesota, man, that's a real good sign.
You and I obviously were super out on Julius Randle earlier in the season. Now both of us are surprisingly super in on this. Can I interest you, Bill Reiter, in a Wolves-Knicks, everybody won the trade NBA Finals?
Not only am I here for it, that's probably the outcome that we're barreling toward that. I think that's the most likely outcome.
Where the trade works out both ways, everybody got divorced.
Wins.
Kat got divorced and Julius Randle got divorced, and their new marriages, they're all very happy and everybody's excited.
I know there's only one couple. I know a lot of divorced couples like we all do. I know one who are best friends and they vacation together with each other's spouses. And you know what? It can happen in the NBA too. Who knew?
It can happen in the NBA too. Squad goals. All right, don't go anywhere. On the other side, we got 2 big game 5s coming up tonight in the NBA. We're going to preview and give predictions on those. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. 2 big game 5s tonight in the NBA. Oklahoma City at the Nuggets. I want to get your prediction on this game, Bill. Oklahoma City is favored by 10.5, and then you've got the Cavs trying to stave off elimination at home. They're down 3-1 to the Pacers. But I was thinking, you and I were talking about the NBA being so unpredictable now, especially with the Jayson Tatum injury. There's a world now moving forward where you might not have the Boston Celtics and Tatum in the next round. You might not have Steph Curry. He could be out. It's possible that Joker, who's won 3 of the last 4 MVPs, might not be out. If you're the NBA, do you make that trade because you get the Knicks in the next round, or are you devastated that you've lost so much star power?
No, look, it depends on, you said this in the break. If it's Pacers Thunder, I'm here for it, but the NBA probably isn't. But if you get the Knicks in the finals and they're the betting favorites, nothing matters. That's pure, that you're printing money.
Yeah. All right. So Oklahoma City and the Nuggets series is tied 2-2. We were talking about, can you imagine if Joker and the Nuggets win this game going back up 3-2 to Denver? Joker has not shot the ball well at all in the last 2 games, but he's Nikola Jokic, and him having another game 1 scenario where he goes for 40 and 20 has to be at least on the table somewhat.
45% chance. Look, I think the Thunder win this, and I think they win the next one. They're the better team, but they haven't done it before, and Jokic has, and it's been a crazy postseason. So who knows?
It has been a crazy postseason. What about also the Cavs and the Pacers? The Cavs are actually favored in this game, Bill, but they're down 3-1 and they're on the ropes, and Donovan Mitchell is questionable. Cavs are minus 7.5 point favorites.
Yeah, this feels like the Pacers put them out of their misery, and the Cavs slink off into their offseason.
What a bummer of a season for the Cavs. I mean, you had the number 1 seed, the number 1 offense, the coach of the year, the defensive player of the year. 2 guys are going to make all NBA, and you're going to get bounced out in unceremonious fashion, most likely by the Pacers. Are good, but still, that's brutal.
It's an absolutely failed season.
We'll see what happens tonight. We're going to be live on YouTube tonight after those 2 game 5s between the Nuggets and Oklahoma City and the Pacers and the Cavs. Come and join us live on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. As Bill mentioned, NBA is wild right now. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tonight on YouTube.